before it's all over with, we're gonna Ngozi may bless us with some latest information or some new DNA study of the ancient Egyptians, and maybe he can spank Africa teacher tonight.
African teacher, he's on point, man. He don't claim the Egyptians being He's actually a good. If people listen to him, he's actually good with breaking it down because he doesn't claim them being black. African teacher is a great teacher, and a new research, they were not black. They were not sub-Saharan Africans. They were not people from south of the Sahara. They were indigenous with their own cluster, but they also had Epipaleolithic Levantine ancestry that back migrated a very long time ago. So even with the recent studies from 2025, the Libyan mummy that they found in the specific zone, she had a unique cluster that belongs to ancestral North Africans that was distinct from groups in sub-equatorial Africa. So the Egyptians were their own. And the only population based off findings that matches up with Egyptians today are the modern Egyptians. The modern Egyptians are the ancient Egyptians. That's just what it is. The integration of anything else outside of that, it's not that. They were not black sub-Saharan Africans. Yes, there was a CHG signal, a Caucasus hunter-gatherer signal from populations that back migrated from the Caucasus a very long time ago that went into the zone, into those areas. The proxy that's used is Zuzana, which is basically ancient West Asians that back migrated that also filtered certain parts of the Lesser Caucasus. They also found their way back into the Nile Valley and intermingled with the indigenous ancestral North Africans. So by the time you have dynastic Egypt, the population group was already fit into its own cluster with their own unique clines that's genetically distinct from populations that we descend from in sub-Saharan Africa. So the Egyptians were not Nigerians. They were not. They were not none of the people. Even the people in the Sahel who have the layer of this ancestral North African, a large layer of it is distinct because they don't have the later integration of the certain signature that came from Eurasians that came in multiple waves into North Africa. Some people was trying to deny the back migration that occurred. Back migration occurred multiple times, as early as 23,000 years ago. Another layer it would post Natufians, meaning after Natufians, with the pre-Neolithic B group. That was a cluster between Natufians and populations from southern Turkey that back migrated and became the Fayum groups in northern Egypt in the Delta, and then came down and intermingled and later evolved into the Mahdi and the Badarians and later the Nakada, which all created their own cluster that matches up with people in the Levant or Palestine or those areas, especially in the Delta. So the closest proxy to ancient Egyptians in a specific time period, especially early dynastic, would be Bedouin B groups, and those Bedouin B groups fall in line with populations of Socotra and Yemen and places like that compared to population groups in sub-equatorial zones of Africa. So when what they classifying is certain layers of West Asian is actually ancestral North African that went through a further genetic drift at a certain time. So the new findings and new discovery only shows that the modern Egyptians is closer to the ancient Egyptians. They only have an 8% increase of specific sub-Saharan African, but the 8% increase is distinct from the earlier motor signals that were there at lower percentages, even though their overall DNA composition fits in line with North African Levantine. And I think it's better to say that.
Thank you for that, Street Sufi.
Peace.